third episode of the Smart Water Mentorship Program. This is an initiative led by the SWAN Forum and the Rising Smart Water Professionals, or better known as RiSWP. My name is Sapir Yarden, and I am the Operations and Ecosystem Lead for SWAN. SWAN is the leading global hub for the smart water and wastewater sectors. We bring together utilities and solution providers, industry experts to talk about accelerating. If you wouldn't mind muting yourselves while we do the presentation, that would be excellent for everyone. Thank you. The Smart Water Hub brings together innovative leaders around the world to discuss accelerating data-driven solutions in smart water networks. In May, we will have our 11th annual conference. This is our flagship event that will focus on redefining smart water. So the industry has changed many times over the year, and the definition of smart water has changed as well. So we're looking forward to a very exciting event. It'll be the first virtual Smart Water Week, bringing together over 500 participants from around the world. Last year, we had over 65 unique utilities in attendance, and we're really looking forward to a big event this year that'll really show case studies and insights from around the world. We invite you to submit a call for abstracts. So here are some of the building blocks and themes, and with that, I will share a very short video to present what our utility leaders are saying about smart water and the conference as well. Oh, my apologies. One moment.
Just turn it louder.
Smart water to me are people who think and work in a way that's inclusive, integrated, and innovative. And that speaks to the theme of SWAN. Inclusion is all about different ideas, which are the building blocks. And integration is how we work together to see how we have commonality to create value together.
In a nutshell, I would define smart water as the new ITC-enabled approach to running the water business.
Smart to me means solving problems before they happen. It's our response to a particular event that will impact our business. It isn't easy, and there are many component parts to this, whether it's maximizing the data we already have or leveraging new data sets, or whether it's about driving faster innovation or global collaboration to truly transform our industry.
I feel smart water is more important now than ever. The data and insights it generates lets us manage our infrastructure more proactively and more efficiently. Our customers receive a reliable service because we know about issues and we can act proactively or get the network to self-correct.
Bueno, Smart Water es un conjunto integrado de infraestructura, equipamientos, sistemas y soluciones que permiten monitorear nuestras redes de agua potable y agua servida con el objetivo de diagnosticar los problemas y lograr eficiencia en las redes a través del Internet de las cosas.
Smart water to me is the whole new concept of water management from treatment, supply, until you get to the customers, using the new technologies and innovations that make our work easier and also which makes our customer happy because of the services that we give to them.
Smart water for me is that we can share our data and knowledge easily, that expert knowledge can be applied by everyone in the utility, and that this knowledge can turn into smarter decisions. That is why we are currently improving our digital twin of the urban drainage system in VCS Denmark, trying to improve the data architecture, but also how we can learn from the underlying data with advanced analytics.
You don't want to miss the leading virtual event of the year. Not only you should tune in, but you can participate by submitting an abstract. We want to hear your ideas, your experience.
Okay, thank you for watching that with us. So we highly encourage young professionals to share their insights at the SWAN conference this year. We definitely want to have more diversity of representation across the board. So your insights would be very valuable to our very large community. And, oh, sorry. Lastly, I want to share that SWAN is hiring an APAC-based project manager. This is a part-time position, about 3 days a week, locally based in the Asia Pacific. So if you or a colleague are interested, please let us know. You can find the full job description and apply on the SWAN website. And with that, I will transition it over to Rudy.
Thanks, Sophia. Welcome, everybody. My name is Rudy Bueta. I'm part of the RiSWP leadership team that you see on your screen right now. So RiSWP stands for Rising Smart Water Professionals. We're the young professional body of the SWAN network. And we have launched this mentorship program to offer young professionals life and career advice from the best in smart water. So this mentorship program is a series of interactive digital interviews with the world's leading smart water sector professionals. We've taken inspiration from Tim Ferriss's book, Tribe of Mentors, and the interviews are structured around a set of optional guiding questions, which aim to draw out some advice from these leading professionals for the young professional community. We have monthly interviews and they will be recorded and published on the SWAN website as a library of resources for future reference. So we hope that this advice, some of it may resonate with you now and others in future, but it'll always be a resource that can transcend time. And we hope you enjoy this interview. Today we are featuring Prof. Andrea Cominola. Andrea is an assistant professor and head of the Smart Water Networks Group at the Einstein Center of Digital Future and the Technische Universität Berlin in Germany. He received his PhD in Information Technology at Politecnico di Milano in Italy for his dissertation on modeling residential water consumers' behavior using smart meter data. He holds an MSc and BSc in Environmental and Land Planning Engineering, also from Politecnico di Milano. His research is focused on different aspects of digital water, hydroinformatics, and related data mining, and machine learning applications to advance the digitalization of water and energy utilities, support water efficiency and conservation, and consumer engagement. Research topics include intelligent water metering, behavioral modeling, urban water and energy demand modeling and management, water efficiency and conservation, modeling of water distribution networks, coupled human environment systems, and leakage and anomaly detection. He was born and raised in Italy, but Andrea currently lives in Berlin. He says he is passionate about the earth, innovation, and design, and is looking forward to be able to travel again. Please give a warm welcome for Andrea Cominola.
Thanks a lot, Rudy, for this introduction, very extended introduction. Very happy to be here. So thanks for inviting me, and I'm very glad to see many people joining here. So I'm happy to hopefully give some insights.
Thank you so much, Andrea, for joining us. We're going to start with a few icebreaker questions. So these are known as rapid fire questions. So please let us know what's the first thing that comes to mind as I ask these questions. So please complete the sentence. Smart water is?
Smart water is, for me, is primarily people, I would say, because to me, water is already smart in a way. So think about the water cycle. There are also theories that say that, river networks somehow evolve according to optimality principles. So water is smart. Is when it comes to humans using it that we need to have some additional smartness, let's say. And so here's where people is important to me. So people that need to be able to be aware about water consumption, about the water usage and the consequences, and then the people working with water management to be able to take wise decisions with the proper technology supporting that.
That's a very unique answer to that question. And maybe we can add it to that intro video. The next up is, what do people often get wrong about you?
I'm not sure. This is something you should ask to the people, actually. But no, I think in general, maybe Some people think I'm super serious. After all, I'm not, but maybe since I'm a bit shy in some occasions, this might be the first impression. And then I would also like to echo something that Professor Savic said in the first mentorship meeting here, that sometimes you expect researchers or professors to have all answers, and normally we have more questions than answers. So that's also something that should not be taken wrong, let's say.
Very true. And next up, one of your favorite books.
I expected that question actually, so I prepared that. I have two indeed. So first one is called Endurance. I'm not sure you can see it. Yes. So that's a book about the journey of Captain Shackleton and his crew to the South Pole, and it's actually, I guess many of you might know, it's a lot about endurance, about survival, about leadership and team at the same time. So that's really inspiring to me. I like adventure in general. And then the second one is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. That's a lot about behaviors and the process of thinking and human brain and so on. So yeah, so the two books that I equally like.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to reading them. And what is a must-have part of your typical workday?
Well, as an Italian, coffee would sound a bit obvious. In general, I would extend it. I would say that breakfast is really key to me. I'm a morning person, so usually in the morning I'm pretty active, and breakfast is a good time for me to visualize the day. And also it's a good time for having ideas. So it's where I sort of plan the day, plan the next actions and so on. And also maybe a handwritten to-do list. I stick to that on a daily basis.
Sounds like a good start to the day. And what is on your nightstand?
So I don't have one, to be honest. That's a piece of furniture we never bought, myself and my fiancé, in this new house here in Berlin. But there are some things I normally put next to my bed. And so I would say definitely an alarm clock, definitely a picture of myself and my beloved, a book, even when I'm not reading. And then something, let's say, a bunch of tools that now probably after some years converge to a smartphone or an iPad, where I could listen to music, read the news, and yeah, basically that would be it, more or less.
And what is a snapshot of an ordinary moment in your life that brings you true joy?
Well, I have this recurrent memory that I would definitely mention, top one. Obviously goes back to non-pandemic times. That was December 2019. So I have my birthday usually in December, and some friends of mine came over here to Berlin to visit me. It started with 2 people, then we ended up being like 15 of my closest friends just coming here and making me this nice surprise. So that's definitely a very good memory. I hope we can go back to these things soon.
And lastly, what is your latest curiosity? I saw on Twitter that you built an Arduino robot, so I'm sure you have lots of interesting hobbies.
Well, yes, and I have to say also during the last years, we've spent a lot of time at home and so on. The amount of things I got interested in to expand it. So I would say non-research wise, so not job related, I definitely enjoy playing the piano that I started again after many years. I used to play as a kid. Then in general, well, cooking is definitely something. So depending on the period, I get more interested in specific sort of food and sort of these things. And then recently also growing vegetables at home. That's been in the last year, I guess, something common to many people. Whereas research-wise, I would say my latest curiosity is more about, so we've been researching a lot about human behavior in connection to water consumption. So now I got really interested in connecting human behaviors also to other aspects of water resources and research in the water field. So lately we started a project that's more connecting human behavior and flood events and in general flood vulnerability. So that's hopefully something that we'll have to work on for quite some time now.
Oh, that sounds very exciting. Thank you for the rapid fire questions. Now we'll get into the more serious things and ask you a bit more about your career and life advice for our smart water professionals. So the first question, and feel free to elaborate as much as you like. Are there any significant people or events that helped you get to where you are now in your career as a smart water professional?
Yes, definitely. Yes, I would say. So maybe also for those that attended also the previous mentorship events here, I have obviously less experience with some of the other speakers. So let's say what I'm listing now, what I'm replying now refers to a few years, not really 50 years of experience, right? But still, I think even if it's not many years, there were some events and people that definitely sort of guided my path. It would be a lot to mention everyone, so I'm gonna stick to some of them. Well, definitely first position, I would say my PhD advisor. He actually managed to convince me to start a PhD. I was not 100% sure I wanted to at the beginning, and that was really then something that sort of has been driving my career later on. So that was definitely something, and he's I would say the person that I still consider my mentor, even though now we're working different places and so on. Whenever I need to get some suggestions or so, that's the first person I always refer to. And this comes also with an event, I would say, that was 2012. I was in the United States to spend some time working at my master's thesis. And at the end of this, so I was there in the fall, and everything was planned to go back to Italy for Christmas. And straight before Christmas, there was this conference in San Francisco, the AGU fall meeting, so the American Geophysical Union conference. And I was just a student working at my master's thesis, and I decided to attend that conference. We were in Pennsylvania, by the way, then, so we moved to San Francisco. Well, of course, because it's cool, but then because there was a conference, and that was really something that got me trapped in research, I would say. There was not really much, I would say, about smart water as we're talking today. It's this super broad conference about geosciences, so earth and space science. But that's really probably something where I've seen, okay, maybe research is something I want to keep on doing also in the next years. And now I don't want to spend maybe much time in telling many other things, but probably a couple of more things are really important. A person and an event, again. I will start from the event. It's actually a project that's called, used to be called actually Smart H2O. It's a European project that was starting a few months after I started my PhD. So I could work with my research as part of this European project. And that was really something super motivating to me, because I was not just doing my research alone. Some people are having fun with that. I'm not that kind of person. So I like better to be also in a context where I could get a lot of interactions, sometimes always also very long meetings, sometimes even maybe boring meeting, I have to say. But that was really a good context to get to learn a lot. I get to build a network of contacts and so on. And last thing I would probably say, well, of course, obviously the opportunity to come here in Berlin and start my research group. But there's a person I would like to mention also. That's the co-advisor of my master's thesis. So I go back to the same period when I was in the United States. And there's a bit of an anecdote on that, because I was, I was working with another guy for our thesis. We prepared to present our idea and our work to this professor. We were a bit scared, it's the first time we were traveling so far, talking to a professor in a very good American university. So we felt somehow pressure, and he was kind of silent for the whole presentation. And then at the end he said, okay, everything sounds good, but who really cares about what you do? And that's been something like really the key question that has been driving then my next steps later in research. So when we do something, when we do a new project or so, I always pose the question, okay, but who cares? Why is this useful? Who will benefit from this? So this is also keeping sort of the focus on the motivation.
Thank you, and that's very motivating and inspiring to hear. I'd like to just remind the audience that we are taking questions for Prof. Cominola. in the chat box, and we'd like to really get the audience participation in this session. So if you have a question, please post it, and we'd like to get you to ask it yourself and put your video on. So hoping for questions soon, but in the meantime, I'll keep asking mine. So next up, what is one of the best or most worthwhile investments you've ever made? This isn't necessarily money. It could be money, time, energy, or anything else.
Well, yeah, I haven't done many investments in terms of money, you know, as academics, we just a joke, of course. No, I think my main investments are more in energy and time, definitely. I think probably the biggest one was really taking the decision to move here in Berlin, where I am now. That dates back not so much, it was 2018. And so I was really attracted by the Einstein Center Digital Future. You see the logo in my background is basically this inter-university center where I'm part from. So I'm actually part of the TU Berlin, but also the Einstein Center. And they had this offer for looking for junior professors, as they call them here. So it's basically assistant professors for starting a research group on smart water networks. And at the time I was completing the Smart H2O project. And I was looking for something, you know, in the field, and there were not really many opportunities abroad and in Italy too. And then I found this one, and so then I applied. It took quite a lot before actually everything was decided. But then that was really a big opportunity, and it was quite uncertain for many reasons, you know. So you're thinking you need to move abroad, which is fine. I've been traveling also a lot before, but then still, you know, thinking about moving for quite some time. Also thinking about personal relationships with friends, family, and so on is kind of an investment, I would say. And in terms of energy also, you know, you're moving somewhere where you don't know many people, you don't really know maybe the context, and you have this mission somehow to start a new research group. So I felt quite some energy was required for that. But I think it was definitely worthwhile so far. And I think that's in general, that was really a good investment. And in general, traveling has always been a good investment for me. Well, not necessarily always. I've started actually traveling a lot quite late, but then when I started, then I could not stop anymore. And that was always a good investment because then you get to learn new things, you get to know new people, and that's always enriching. And this somehow comes also with the investment of accepting, you know, that wherever you go and whatever you do, especially in research, you're never done, right? So there's always something to discover, something to learn. And so this comes with a little bit of acceptance. Okay, that's a continuous investment, if you wish.
Indeed, it's like traveling through the research. I like that analogy. And next up, what is the most important leadership lesson you've learned, and how has it proven invaluable?
That's a good question. I think in general, maybe it's not just one lesson. Maybe it's more about a leadership attitude, I would say, in the sense that all the main leadership lessons I've learned and I've seen by, in general, more senior people came as unspoken action. So usually silent leaders were the ones that inspired me the most. So leaders that actually do rather than speak. So they prove with their action that they can somehow prove their authority or leadership and drive the team as part of the team, not really from the top-down approach. So that's my personal view of what leadership is. And also I've learned by looking at, as I said again, to more senior people that inspire me every day, but also with my experience, understanding people is really a proof of leadership, because if you're empathetic, then I would say, especially in research, but not necessarily, and that's important everywhere, but I noticed that in research, as that's the field where I'm from, that understanding people is very good to build trust and, you know, to actually advance and keep all the team motivated and not just doing things because somebody is asking them to do things. That's not the way that I would see leadership. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to hand over to Emma now, who's got a question from the audience for you.
Yeah, sure. So I'm just scrolling through, and I would just remind everyone, please use the chat function to share your questions. We'll be dropping these out through the session. But so far, the only question I see is from Shirley. So Shirley, do you actually want to unmute yourself and ask it?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Andrea. I appreciate your time. This is a question, it's not for me personally, but I am curious to hear your perspectives, and given this RiSWP group, I think it may be relevant for others, so please feel free to chime in. What skill sets gained in academia are helpful for those maybe looking for a career change or a change transitioning to either the private sector or maybe working for a public water utility? Any tips or advice from your perspective and talking with colleagues that you can share with this group? Thanks.
Yeah, yeah, thanks, Shirley. Very good question. Let's say I have some answers here. I cannot have the proof that they work because I never actually worked in the private sector, but I will try to give an answer. I think in general, coming from research and academia, there are obviously, I would say, a couple of things that can be useful in any field. Depending on the field, of course, you come with a technical background, and so the technical skills might fit or might not fit the specific field. So that's something I'm not gonna comment too much. But definitely there are two things that I would say help a lot in research. First one is about the way of approaching a project. So maybe even when you're doing a PhD that is focused on a tiny or very specific topic, you're basically an entrepreneur of your research, right? So you have to organize your time, your resources. You're the leader and the executor of your project. So you have to find a balance between the different actions and so on. So I think definitely project management skills are skills that can be then relevant for other sectors. Then this also somehow connected to this, also the way of approaching problems. I think in research, often we start with, you try to approach problems that are very big in general in research. So you never know whether you're gonna have an answer to the original problem. So the approach is usually you try to characterize this problem and unpack it in smaller problems and tasks. And I think this really helps also when you move to another sector. So it's more the mindset of approaching big problems. So it's more of a problem solving mindset. And third aspect that I would say is probably a bit dependent on your path in academia. But then I noticed that also while going to conferences, meeting people, and you meet different people, because sometimes you meet fellow researchers, sometimes you meet people in the private or public sector, sometimes you meet very well-established professors, the citizens. We also do outreach. So one thing that, if you want, can be really well trained is trying to understand the audiences and understand what and how to communicate things to different audiences. I hope these answers.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Andrea. We're going to continue now with the list of guiding questions from my side. The next one is very similar. It's to what you've just answered. What advice would you give to smart-driven, inspired, rising professional or graduates about to enter the smart water world? And is there any bad advice that they should ignore?
Okay. Yeah, that's also a very good one. In general, the advice I would give is really about asking whenever they have a question or whenever they're curious about something. So trying to find the right person to ask to. The smart water world is big, there's a lot of things included in that. There's the technological aspect, more citizen or utility related aspects, decision making, research, operation. So that's really wide. So I think to find your position in this broad field, you need to find maybe not necessarily some models to mimic, but some people that can somehow guide you through this, right? And I think something that people should not, young professionals, where I include also myself, I should never be afraid of is really asking to people that have more experience or have different experience in general. So, and chasing them. So if you really want to get some information by a person, do chase that person, go after that. So trying to find your mentors, and with mentors, it's not just somebody that needs to follow you on a regular basis. You know, it can be just somebody that inspires you for some particular action or some particular aspect. So my advice is really about being curious, ask, never be afraid to ask, and chase the people you want to actually talk to. Bad advice is, I'm not quite sure here. Maybe one thing, you know, if I think to research, but I'm pretty sure this also works for the industrial sector or so. In general, I've always been a lot more inspired by people that welcome change. So in general, not all changes are good, right? But some are. And before rejecting a change, you should evaluate the change. So I usually recommend to, you know, try to find suggestions by also people that like to analyze changes and welcome them when they're useful. So usually I tend to refrain a bit from being inspired or getting suggestions by those that want to maintain the status quo. So it's rapidly evolving field. And I think, yeah, in research and in industry as well, curiosity and the ability to analyze or welcome change go somehow together.
Thank you. I'm going to hand over again to Emma for another audience question.
Yeah, sure. So Mthokosisi, sorry if I mispronounced your name, but actually, if you could turn on your camera and maybe turn on your camera and your microphone and introduce yourself, and then ask your question, would be great to start meeting some of our attendees. And then after you, we have another great question from Edward. So let's go 2 questions this round, and then we'll hand back to Rudy. If you can turn on your microphone. If your camera is not working, that's fine, but just microphone.
Hello?
Yeah, perfect. We can hear you.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
So my question was on how you stay relevant in a rapidly advancing technological world.
Great question.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for the question. Well, it takes some dedication, I would say, in general, because as you said, it's very rapid. So we need to sort of constantly try to be updated. I think in general, what helps a lot, especially in the research field, is really trying to find a position, or better, try to find communities as a reference. So this one is a community itself in this case. There are other communities and societies worldwide that I'm part of. And so some reference points really help, because you know that via these communities, you will get the latest updates. And in general, what I tried to do in these last years is really trying to follow communities that are either purely, let's say, academia driven, so more really into the research, but also those mixed communities where you have really a presence of academicians as well as practitioners from the industrial sector. So I think being part of some of these communities really help. And then I think as many things, I guess, as probably many of you have, I also identified some key persons in this field that I'm also, for instance, following on the social networks and social media and so on. And this helps a lot, you know, more on a somehow passive way, you know, as you scroll your Facebook page, then you can also do the same with LinkedIn or so. And I think this helps a lot. And then, of course, in our field, reading. Of course, time for reading is always very little, but you know, in research, that's very important. So I think also being able to identify the right spots where you can read interesting stuff really pays off.
Great. And then we had a question from Edward, and then after that, we'll hand back to Rudy. So Edward, if you'd like to turn your mic on and ask your question, and camera if you're able, if you're on a stable connection as well.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Professor Andrea and the team.
Hi.
My question is similar to the last one. If you could gaze into the future, what technology or area of research do you think would have the most impact in the next 10 to 20 years?
Oh, that's a $1 million question. Hard to say. I mean, you know, as this rapidly evolved in the last years, also doing a forecast for the next 10, 20 years is really a bit of a guess, I would say. You've seen also how much the world changed in just 1 year. And that was not about water, that was about everything. In general, I would say that from what I'm seeing now, while there's a lot of interest in digital twins, I think they're gonna be there and more of them will be there in the next years. There are many people working already on digital twins, many people also just talking about digital twins. So I expect definitely more actions to come on that side, also because there are some areas, even if you think about replicating a water network with the digital twin, there are some areas of the urban water system that are more exploited than others. So I would say that technology in that case is definitely something that I see so that area of technology is something where I see development in the next years. That also comes somehow with the cybersecurity aspect. I'm not sure, maybe some of you are not familiar with that. There's been quite a lot of development in these last years about, when you digitalize a water network, then this comes also with more exposure to cyber attacks. So that's also something that I see. I would see a lot of actions in the next years. And maybe finally, this connects already somehow to the cybersecurity aspect. I would say maybe I see that's not a specific area of technology, but it's more an area of research, I think, in trying to build synergies with other sectors, specifically referring to the energy sector, for instance, or if you think about urban areas, also the ecological aspects with biodiversity and so on. So I think research that stands in the between of more than one field, where one field is water and then and there are some other fields in the game, is really something that there's a lot of research ongoing. There's going to be more because that's also an opportunity to exploit the transferability of some technologies. There's actually a project that we started last year, and we're exactly looking at this. So we're looking at how so we're not looking at developing specifically new tools to model a water network, for instance. There are already some tools for doing that. Of course, they can improve, etc. In our case, we're trying to actually couple these with other sort of simulators. For instance, if you think about the electricity grid, if you think about all the communication of sensor data in these two fields. So we're trying to build a multi-layer twin, actually, for simulating different scenarios on that. And that's going to be a 3 years project that I hope will then open up several opportunities for further development too.
Thanks, Andrea, and thanks, Edward, for that question. That was very interesting to hear what's coming next. Next up, I have a question about mentorship. Andrea, do you have a mentor, or have you ever had a mentor? And if so, what role did they play in your career?
Well, many mentors and many roles, I would say. Well, I mentioned already, probably there are some mentors that are more, let's say, constant in time. So their presence is more constant in time. And I mentioned already my PhD advisor, and together with him, I also would like to mention a few other people in that research group that I worked with. So I was also strictly working with a researcher, now assistant professor, in the same group. And we've been working together really closely for 4 years or so, even before actually doing my bachelor and master thesis already. And so they've been sort of seen me growing in this field, and so they know also the background, the history, and usually, these are really the reference point for me when I need to get some suggestions or so. In general, that's not the only mentor or the only mentors that I've mentioned. I think there are some mentors also that are maybe not necessarily a mentor in the classical way of thinking. So they're not a person that I'm talking to very often, or the first person that I'm seeking for advice or so, but maybe just people that somehow inspired me, either with a specific achievement, for instance, or with a specific aspect of their attitude or so. And these are really various. I can mention, for instance, well, obviously, I would say, especially for the attitudes or so, my father and the father of my best friend, actually, they were doing completely different jobs, but I think their attitude and approach towards your job, towards also personal, let's say, aspects of life, sort of inspired me. And sometimes that didn't require anything active, right? It was a lot about observation and trying to absorb. I actually tend to absorb a lot by the people that surround me. So, and that would definitely extend, therefore, also to others that I would define maybe friends or my girlfriend as well, even before mentors. Those people that maybe have a completely different path, but that you can rely on for some good suggestions, for some comparison. I was actually lucky to be part of a double degree program during my master. That was 150 students from the two main technical universities in Italy. And out of this big group, there's a group now with 20 people, more or less, and that we're really good friends, and we still keep in touch very often. We have a WhatsApp group and so on. And we have all different sorts of career. So job-wise, and we're all at the same age, let's say. And so job-wise, it's not like the old mentor where you can learn from, but it's more like peer-to-peer, a bit of benchmarking, understanding where we're going. Okay, what's your impression on this and so on. So I think that really helps. And now I'm getting too long in this answer, but maybe a couple of more points. Definitely my students. In general, I try to adopt a quite open style in the teaching and in the research. So especially in academia, I think that we should enable our students to actually find their path rather than giving them tasks. And this is actually, for me, paying off a lot, because I'm learning a lot every day from them. Yeah, I would say maybe these. And then, of course, there are some, let's say, I don't know, maybe I would sound a little bit of a stalker in this, but there are some people in the field, in the specific field of smart water networks, that I'm not necessarily saying I would like to do the same career, but obviously they've been successful so far. And so even just doing some, LinkedIn stalking or so helps a lot, I think, because then you see, I like to see how different people that maybe started with a common background and ended up doing different things. And so I like to see the transitions.
Yeah, it's nice to hear that you learn so much from your students, as well as from the LinkedIn stalking, as well as the more significant mentors in your life. Next up, my question is about your future career goals. I think you may have already mentioned some in the previous audience question, but I'll ask it anyway. What is your next big career goal, or where are you hoping to take your career next? And what advice would you give your mentee if they had this goal?
Okay, cool. Well, it would sound a bit obvious if I say getting a permanent position at the university. Let's get a bit more serious. I think in general, so in the last 2 years, as I said, I'm bringing the perspective of a person that started the research group less than 3 years ago. So maybe if you ask me the same question in 20 years or so, it's going to be a different answer. At this time, I think we invested quite a lot. I'm saying we because it's not just me, of course, it's the whole group, in starting a lot of new projects in the last 2 years. And so right now, I think we have opened a lot of research tracks that we would like to investigate on for the next years. And sometimes synergies are obvious, sometimes they're not. I think my goal now is really, of course, capitalizing on this investment that we've been doing by starting a project. We want, of course, to get some results out of them. But I would like also to create really a more homogeneous, not necessarily homogeneous, but more connected sort of ecosystem in the group, where all the projects actually would talk and communicate mutually better. Because now, as I said, we started somehow in parallel. I would like these to converge. So to work a bit also on the identity of the group in the long term. Then, better than me that academia comes also with a lot of uncertainty. So maybe if you ask me the same question in 1 year, no, I'm kidding. Hopefully the answer is going to be the same. And you asked me also for an advice. I think in general, an advice that I could give to a mentee is probably trying to find her or his position in this field. So now, of course, I'm again basing my answer on the research side, since that's basically my career at the moment. I think finding the right place and the right people to work on and an ecosystem that allows you to actually express your creativity and research interest is probably the most worthwhile investment in research. Because if you, as I said before, research is often a lot of, I see it very similar to entrepreneurship, where the goal is probably not gaining more money, but it's achieving some good results, advancing a field or so. And this comes really dependent by motivations. And if you find the right spot and the right people to do so, it's a plus. It's an advantage already.
Oh, fantastic. And the last question from my side, what is your favorite question to ask in an interview and how would you answer it?
That's a hard question. No, I know very well the first part. I think my favorite question to ask, in general, hiring process for us is primarily for PhD researchers or postdocs. At the moment, I've done more for PhD candidates. And my favorite question really, I'm a bit repetitive probably on this, but it's about the motivation. So my favorite question is really, why are you here? And why do you want to get this position? And also similar question to what you asked me before. So where do you see yourself? Maybe not necessarily in 5 years, maybe just 3, maybe 4. And I don't expect an answer that then will be actually let's say the actual involvement in 4 years. I mean, when you start a PhD, you never know really. In 5 years, many things can change, many new opportunities will open. So probably your first answer will be changed by reality. But this shows really whether what the motivations are, which I said are really important in research, as in all the fields. I think motivations show why and how you would care about what you're doing. And even, I would say that even when you're having maybe some ups and downs, maybe some downs in your research and in your PhD or so, then motivations usually are the good push. So if you remember and you ask why you're doing that and what you want to accomplish, then this stays in time, I would say. And of course, it's not only about motivation, but as I said, maybe asking what you're going to do in 5 years or so is showing somehow what the long-term perspective would be, what the, let's say, ambition of a person would be as well. Well, I'm not sure I would have a unique answer to what I would answer to that question. Obviously, is really dependent on the kind of job you're applying for, the kind of research project, for instance. But what I can say is that I always ask the same question to myself. As I said before, when you start a new project or when you do something more, then I'm always asking myself this famous "who cares" that this American professor actually asked me once. So that's somehow keeping me finding, checking my motivations, whether something is worthwhile an investment or not. And yeah, that would be it, I guess.
going to ask myself, who cares that this interview is going ahead next? I know, we're so grateful for your
many
presence.
people are caring about it. That's good.
We have so many in attendance here. Just going to put it out there for the audience again. If there are any last questions for Prof. Andrea before we end the session, welcome to.
There's one question from Sapir. So Sapir, if you want to turn your mic back on.
Sure. Thank you, Emma, and thank you, Andrea and Rudy. So you mentioned that there are synergies with other sectors, and I'm wondering what types of collaborations have you been a part of, or what are the different types of collaborations that researchers can get involved with in the industry?
Yeah, very good question. So in general, we're involved in several collaborations that involve multi-sectors, both purely at the academic research level, but then you ask more about the industrial level. At the moment, we have quite a few collaboration, primarily with technology developers. So that kind of that sector in the industrial, let's say, bigger sector, and water utilities. And obviously, the two things come with different problems and also different scales. Usually, utilities are interested in managing their big system, right? The network and so on. So that's the kind of projects that we can work on at the moment. Specifically on that, we're working on a couple of projects. One is more really related about creating a software tool for simulating the different aspects of a city, of a smart city, I would say, in that project. So that's not obviously only my group, it's a bunch of groups, and we're often getting interaction with the water utilities, obviously the local water utility in Berlin, and that's also co-sponsoring our group, by the way, as part of this Einstein Center. So that's the Einstein Center itself is an ecosystem enabling us and companies to get in touch very often. And there are some other aspects related to, as I mentioned, technology providers. At TU, we also have a big laboratory, which is not owned directly by our group, by the Fluid System Dynamic group that sort of hosts us as a more senior group. And they can try any sorts of sensors in their lab and build test sensors. So we're now working also at digital twins that I mentioned before, together with a specific technology provider. But in the lab, we have many. The freedom of academia is actually the good aspect of being able then to work with many partners that on the market could be competitors. But then in the research, you can work equally good with many of them.
Thank you. That's so interesting. Love to collaborate with you on that in the future.
Sure, feel free. And in general, I think all the people here, also those that didn't ask questions, if they have some questions later, I guess you can easily find my contact online.
Thanks. And we have one more question from Emma.
Yeah, so I was actually going to ask you to expand a little bit on the role of partnerships and innovation between academia and industry. But I think you kind of covered that a little bit, and I actually just received another question. So I'll flip to that, and maybe before we finish off, if you could answer kind of looking at the ongoing water problems in developing and developed countries worldwide, what are your perspectives on scoping the future of research in smart water?
Yeah, oh, that's a very timely question, I would say. It's actually something I wanted to mention before then. I was quite long in some answers, so I couldn't mention everything. That's actually a key point, I think, that goes beyond technology, because of course, the same technology into different contexts finds different challenges. No need to stress that very much, I would say. And so, as I mentioned at the very beginning, smart water is people for me primarily. This comes also with a lot about empowering people to use technology and awareness and training and capacity building and so on. So I think one challenge. I think Professor Savic in the first mentorship series here, he mentioned that internet connection is going to be everywhere. And so that's already a potential also for those contexts that are maybe now having more troubles in adopting technologies than others. So I do believe the same. And I think the real challenge will be then to have actually technology being used and accepted, and let's say empowering the local communities to use it. We have actually a project that started recently with a little bit of delay due to Corona. We had the kickoff a couple of weeks ago, where we're actually it's a EU funding supporting actions in the Mediterranean area, and we're gonna work on improving the sort of level of technology in the network of Khan Yunis in the Gaza Strip. And so, yeah, I'm very happy to share updates about that soon. I think in most of these contexts, or at least in some of the contexts that I'm familiar with, there's often a level of motivation which might be higher than in others because the challenges are bigger. And so that's already a good basis, I guess, for finding good ground for a good job.
So much, Prof. Andrea, and for all the attendees and your interesting questions. It's been a wonderful session. We will be posting the recording of this event on the SWAN webpage and YouTube page, so keep a lookout for that. We'll send out the link to the attendees in the next few days. And then we'd just like to remind you of our feedback survey that's been posted in the chat. So if you'd like to provide us with any feedback on these sessions so that we can make them even better in future, please do follow that link to find out, to let us know what you think. Again, just a reminder about the SWAN conference that you can submit papers. Please do so. We'd love participation from the young professionals. And then our next mentor that we'll be having join us on the 18th of March is Silene Namda. She's the Industry Solutions Executive at Cities and Communities at Cisco. You can see that coming up on your screen now. So do join us for the next session, and we'll keep you posted in our LinkedIn group. Thanks again, Prof. Andrea, and for all the attendees. It's been really an honor to interview you.
Well, thanks a lot for the opportunity. I always like to share some, even as I said, even very fresh, but yeah, experiences, hopefully good for the audience here. And I'm very happy about this invitation and about all the audience here. So thanks a lot to you.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye. Take care, everyone.